Late summer here on the homestead in the farmhouse means we are still hanging laundry outside to dry, experimenting with fresh ingredients from the garden and the orchard, swapping a few clothes out for some colder days, and the homemaking, of course, continues. Mozzarella cheese, homemade ricotta, and sourdough bread is a constant here at the farmhouse, especially this time of year. I get the chance to add in some seasonal things like chanterelle mushrooms, which are abundant right now. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to go to the Ozarks Homesteading Expo, and I was invited to a little tasting dinner, which was designed, curated by the author Rachel West, who wrote the book Wild Foraged, and she featured several wild plants that are native to the Ozarks area, which is in southern Missouri. It was so neat because chanterelle showed up in several of the items. So there was a chanterelle butter. There was something that was in a phyllo dough with, I believe it had chanterelles and some wild greens and elderberries. There are so many things available out right now. Wish I had notes from that event because she had so many more things that are out right now. I really needed to go reference my Wild Forage book because I now have that as well. We tend to forget about all the foods that are available right around us that we don't even have to work to plant and weed and take care of. We just have to know how to identify it and then use it in our food. So that was a really neat experience, and I got to taste my beloved chanterelles in so many different ways. I also got to meet a lot of viewers. I was very much in my niche at this Homestead Expo. People who are interested in gardening, caring for chickens, dairy cows, sourdough. That was what my talk was. I was a speaker at the expo, which was my first speaking gig. And I was a little bit nervous because I've never actually spoken before in front of people. I'm on my podcast. I come on here, but never to where I'm in front of people and I can actually see their faces watching me. But it was cool to put so many faces to the people that watch the videos and learn about sourdough and homemaking and homesteading. So that was such a cool experience. Now, I also recently had a photographer come out to our house to shoot for my upcoming sourdough book. Before she came, I had so many sourdough things that I was preparing, which gave me some insight into, some of the things that we didn't use up during that shoot, I used 8 days later, how long things could actually sit in the fridge and still turn out totally fine. So one of those things was my sourdough puff pastry, which I have been using in so many different ways. So making sweet things, but then also making savory things with it. And I want to keep it in my refrigerator at all times because it is really, really simple to make. But then also I let it sit in the fridge for 8 days. I'd planned to shoot several things in the photography day with that dough. And so I think I doubled it or tripled it. But then we didn't get to everything. And so some of it was just sitting in there until I could get through all of the various sourdough things that I had made ahead of time that I'd stored in the fridge, in the freezer. Well, my puff pastry was sitting in the refrigerator and it still turned out so flaky and so beautiful. I am currently working on the puff pastry, which the way that this works is you bring together the dough in a mixer, knead it. It's just 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup sugar, 1/2 cup of sourdough starter, 3/4 cup whole milk, 1 egg, 1/2 teaspoon vanilla, and a teaspoon of salt. You knead that. You let it ferment out on the counter for 12 hours. Then you put it in the fridge, and then you move on to the laminating step. What's cool is between that first rise and the laminating step, you can let it sit in the fridge for several days. Then when you're ready to laminate it, you create a parchment paper envelope that is 6 inches by 8 inches, and then roll out 2 sticks of butter or a cup of butter into that parchment paper envelope so that it fills the whole thing. Put it back in the fridge, and then you roll the dough that you fermented into a 16 by 8 inch rectangle, wrap the butter inside of it and fold it, and then refrigerate it again, and then roll it out again, fold it, refrigerate. You fold it twice. At that point, that's the point where I put it in the refrigerator for 8 days. It's ready to use just anytime you want a croissant or something sweet like a chocolate pastry, or you could use a fruit jam or you can cut it in half, roll it out, and put half on the bottom of a 9x13 dish, fill it with chicken pot pie or a beef mixture, and then roll out the other half, put it on top, and it creates this savory pie with these beautiful flaky layers. Once you have that puff pastry all made, anytime within the next week, you can use it to make something really fast. So this is going to be my move for the fall. I'm going to get a lot of this going and then just have it in the fridge anytime I want something sweet or savory. I am also working on just my no-knead artisan loaf. I make this all the time. It's the one where you bring the dough together, let it auto-lease. You already saw me earlier doing some stretch and folds. Once I divide it in half before the bulk ferment, I made one of them golden raisin, which is our favorite, toasted with butter, and then the other one plain because I need to use it for breadcrumbs. It's something I like to also keep in a jar on hand for meatloafs, for fried chicken. I'm also working on filling the fridge with more pastry dough. I also mixed up 2 batches of my brioche dough. That can be used to make a babka, brioche pastries, a braided challah. It's also the best bread to use for French toast and French toast casserole. There's a lot that you can do with it. So if you have it in the fridge, you can turn it into several things, and I'm going to show you a few later. I've been meaning to take some time to swap things out in my armoire. Now, it hasn't been consistently cool here. It's been getting down to the 50s every once in a while. The biggest problem I'm having is nursing. So many of the clothes that worked for me a month ago or a month and a half ago no longer work because they don't have good nursing access. Now, my little sister just had a baby too, and she gave me the idea of getting some like biker shorts to put underneath some of the dresses so that you could potentially pull them up, which I've never thought to do before. So I am doing that. But there are several dresses that just simply don't work, but will work later. I also have to get a larger jean size. Now, this is always the case. I'm not worried about it. It just takes a little bit after having a baby for the weight to come off and to fit into your old jeans. And here it is almost fall where I'm actually going to want to be wearing jeans. And quite frankly, none of the current jeans I have, actually, I do have one pair that's pretty stretchy, but most of them just do not work. And so I need a few new items to make this transition wardrobe between summer and fall and pregnancy and nursing work. I did also mention this last fall on my channel, but one of my favorite places to get wardrobe staples is Walmart, particularly their free assembly line. They have basics that are very affordable and also really cute. So I picked up some high-rise jeans that are in my appropriate size. Also, some sweaters that will be great staples all fall as it does get cooler. There are times now whenever I can actually get a sweater out. Jeans and sweaters are really great for nursing because, of course, I can wear my nursing cover and lift them up. I also wanted some simple, basic shoes that I could slip on. Currently, I'm mostly just wearing sandals, but pretty soon I will want to have things that are a little bit more covering and warm. Free Assembly did launch their new fall collection on August 28th, so just recently, and I do have some pieces that I'm eyeing. I like their basics because they have great shaped jeans, turtlenecks, sweaters, hoodies, dresses, shoes, great stuff for a minimal capsule style fall wardrobe. There are also other brands on Walmart.com that launched fall collections. I liked a lot of things by the Time and True brand. They launched their fall collection on the 7th of August. Scoop launched theirs on the 31st. I will be leaving links to some of my favorite picks down in the description box below. Thank you so much to Walmart for sponsoring this portion of today's video. I'm really enjoying my new pieces and looking forward to a few crisp nights to wear the sweaters and of course the jeans that'll carry me through this season. Okay, earlier I mentioned that you could use the brioche dough to make a babka. Now, I do have a separate babka recipe over on farmhousehomeboon.com. It's a very similar dough because it is an enriched dough, which basically means that you're adding fat or eggs. So I add butter and I add eggs to it. And I made a blueberry version this time. I did not get footage of actually rolling it up because we were photographing it, and then I was left with the end product after the photographer left. But I really should have gotten some footage of it, but I was just feeling like it was enough to be getting the photos. The way the process works though is you roll the dough out like a cinnamon roll dough, and then spread it with something. So I made a blueberry jam by cooking down some blueberries and sugar and letting that reduce until it could coat the back of a spoon, spreading it on. Now you could also do chocolate. Over on my blog, I actually have a recipe for chocolate, but in the sourdough book, we are trying to do several things that are brand new exclusively for the book. So I made a blueberry version. You roll it up like a cinnamon roll, but then you cut it down the middle and twist it. Again, if this is very unfamiliar, you could go over to farmhouseonmoon.com and see how I do it, but with the chocolate, it's the same thing with the blueberry, except for obviously it's blueberry, but the process of rolling it up, cutting it down the middle, and then twisting it and putting it in loaf pans is the same. Brioche dough, babka dough, any enriched soft dough makes the best French toast because it really absorbs in the eggs. Of course, you can make sourdough French toast with any kind of sourdough bread, but I do have the best success with an enriched dough. And of course, this blueberry babka is perfect for a French toast casserole because you get little bits of blueberry flavor throughout. The ingredients and ratios I used for this is 2 cups of milk, half a cup of honey, 10 eggs, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of vanilla, and then added in my bread and baked it for 30 minutes at 350 degrees. Everybody, of course, loved it. The next several days after the photographer was here, it was all about using up the stuff that we photographed. I am not one to just throw away anything. I just cannot do it. So we found ways to consume the crazy amount of sourdough stuff that I had. I did freeze some of the pizza crusts, just the pizza dough in Ziplocs, and I froze a couple of boules as well because we did a photo where we had piles of bread and we couldn't eat that amount. I also turned some into breadcrumbs, croutons, and then we'll pull some later out of the freezer. The best way to consume bread out of the freezer is let it come to room temperature and then slice it, toast it, and put butter on it. And that is how it tastes good, even if it was frozen for a while. I've also had some brioche dough sitting in the fridge for several days. I'm going to use them to make brioche pastries. This is great because it's a little bit simpler to create brioche than it is to laminate pastry dough. I'm such a fan of that pastry dough, though. I think I would more quickly do that than I would make these. But this is another really good option because brioche dough really is just so simple. You get all the ingredients in the mixer, let it knead a good long while. It's a very wet dough, so if you are struggling to get the dough to come together, smooth, glossy, not sticky, pulling from the sides of the bowl, a lot of times you just need to let it knead a little bit longer while those rise a bit and the French toast casserole cools out on the line. We don't hang everything out. I mostly just go for the easiest things to do, which would be quilts, sheets, something that doesn't require a whole lot of time, but saves us from running the dryer for over an hour. I also have a rug hanging out on the porch because we got some water in the cottage and we're trying to take advantage of this hot summer sun to completely dry it out. Right now in the landscaping and the garden, everything is just wild. That is the end of summer for you. The flowers have all gotten so tall, they're starting to fall over. The tomatoes are as bushy as they could possibly be. We have some vines that have taken over a lot of things. That end of summer garden, where as we're getting into fall, it's messy, it's overgrown, but we're still getting so much that I can cut and bring inside and use in the kitchen. It's a lovely transition time. Okay, now I'm going to continue to work on my brioche pastries. I have a package of softened cream cheese, a 1/4 cup of sugar, 1 egg yolk, and a teaspoon vanilla. And I'm just going to mix that all up in the bowl. You are hearing all of the baby sounds, which is just homemaking with a newborn. This will be the cream cheese layer that will go in these. Now I'm still experimenting a bit. I do feel like I could have used a bit more filling once these are all said and done, but overall they turned out well. The next step is to create a space in the brioche where the filling can go. I am doing that by flouring the tops a bit and then putting a regular sized mason jar, so not the wider ones, but the half pint. If the dough is too springy, a lot of times the gluten just needs to relax a bit more. You could do that by working it and then letting it sit. So you might have to press it down, then come back in a few minutes and press it down again in order for it to actually stay. One way that worked for me was just letting the jar sit on the dough for a little while. So I got a couple jars out and just let them sit on top and then moved them. This basically is my normal brioche recipe divided into 12, then shaped into balls. As you could see earlier, I actually weighed each one. I think it was, you can look back at the scale, but I think it was around 106 grams per. I was trying to get very specific and perfect for this recipe testing. Floured the tops, flattened them down after they rose a bit, and then added the Danish ingredients, which is the cream cheese mixture, and then a cup of diced strawberries and a tablespoon of sugar on top of that. And then I did an egg wash and baked them for about 20 minutes at 350 degrees. Moving on to what I'm going to call all the things that I have in the refrigerator pizza. If making sourdough seems overwhelming to you because of timing, just remember this trick. You can always mix up a whole bunch of dough and then put it in the refrigerator or the freezer all at once. So that way you could get your mixer dirty once, just have all of your ingredients out. They all require just about the same ingredients, but in different ratios. Get them going in that mixer. Then you can divide them, put them in Ziploc bags and freeze them or put them in the refrigerator if you plan to use them in less than a week. So I had actually put this into the freezer because I was thinking that I wouldn't get to all the pizza crust that I make. So I think I made like 8, but we ended up getting through stuff fast because I have a lot of kids and I'm just cooking and baking left and right to get all this stuff out of here. And it worked great. It was in the freezer for a couple days, then in the fridge thawing for a couple days. And then I got out of the fridge some homemade mozzarella that I had made several days before, some homemade pasta sauce I'd made several days before. Anytime you have some time in the kitchen, whether that's during your kids' afternoon nap or maybe a Saturday, if your spouse is home to help you out, you can just get bulk preparation done if that's something that you want to do. If you want to be cooking from scratch, but you think, how do I fit this in? This is how I do it. I made this mozzarella several days ago because we had too much milk. I felt like I didn't have the time to do the full thing, like make the cheese, put it in the press, do the wheels that age. So I just made up a whole bunch of mozzarella because it's so straightforward. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then I can pull from it for at least a week. I mean, it will go sour unless you're very diligent about pressing out every last bit of milk, which I'm not. But it can stay in there for about a week, especially if you use really fresh milk, which I always do. And then I have this completely homemade pizza from tomatoes from our garden, mozzarella from our cow, sourdough pizza crust, and all of these things were prepped at another time and put in the refrigerator or canned or frozen. And it just made for a really easy lunch. This particular day, my sister and I are taking the kids to a water park. And I also have kids in sports that I had to take, and we needed food on the go. So I did a pizza. I didn't even get a final shot of it. I cut it all up, packed it up. Pizza's actually, especially once it's a little bit cool, really easy to take places. I've also been experimenting with making pizza pockets. So taking that same dough and then making it in these little bite-sized handheld pocket things. Once they cool, they're easy to transport and take along with you. Now I'm going to show you my very favorite thing lately, and that is that pastry dough. I am making a spinach pie, which is 2 10-ounce packages of frozen spinach, defrosted and drained a lot of the water off of that. 4 eggs, a cup of Gruyere cheese. You could also use cheddar. A half a cup of grated Parmesan, a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of pepper. And then you saw me cooking up some onions. So I did 1 large onion, 3 cloves of minced garlic, and 4 tablespoons of butter. I'm just trying to caramelize those onions and not burn them. That's my goal, so that my kids will love that sweet taste. Mix that in and then divide 1 recipe of the pastry dough in half. Roll out 1 half for the bottom, fill it with the filling, the other half for the top. I am so sorry. I somehow misplaced the footage of that process. And then crimp the edges with a fork, create a few little slits in the top, and then bake it. Everyone in your family is going to love it. Mine did. My daughter said I should have added sausage. I know that's not traditionally in spinach pie, but she's right. It would have felt like a more complete meal and been really good with sausage. Now, in the meantime, I am cooking up some peaches for some sourdough hand pies. Okay, this should be called cooking all the sourdough things, but I had a whole bunch of pie crust again from the photo shoot, and I'm finding different ways to use it. Once the spinach pie is out of the oven, I need to photograph it for my book. So I'm gonna style up a piece here on a plate, play around with the lighting and with the tea towel and the different angles, and try to get a picture that would be book worthy. I think I accomplished at least something here for that. Now for these hand pies, we tried this with a pre-made jam, which was also really good whenever the photographer was here. But I wanted to try fresh fruit because we had some peaches in the freezer from picking locally from a peach orchard. And I was thinking how great this would be with apples here as it's apple season now. I cooked them down with some sugar until they were pretty thick, until they coat the back of a spoon, or at least wouldn't be too liquidy. I did want to keep several large pieces, so I didn't really make it into a jam. I made it into, what would that be called? Preserves? I don't know. I wanted some texture in there. Then I rolled out my pie crust, which has been in the fridge for, I don't even know how long, maybe a week. So it's been a little bit more fermented, but not to the point of being too sour, just really good. Rolling it flat, using a biscuit cutter to cut it in circles, filling it with my homemade peach preserves, topping it with another piece, and then crimping the edges with my fingers. And then I actually did it with a fork as well, just to make it a little bit more secure and pretty. I cut little slits in the top, did an egg wash. I should have also at that point topped it with some coarse sugar. That would have been really beautiful and tasty. And then I baked them 375 degrees for about 30 minutes. These were a hit. These are kind of like the pastry dough. I feel now that I should always have pie crust sitting in my fridge. I need to make a routine here. I need at the beginning of the week to make 2 pizza crusts, maybe like 3 or 4 pie crusts, because you could also use that for a quiche. Earlier this week, we made some quiche, and it would have been really nice just to pull that out to make a really fast quiche and not have to get all my ingredients out again. And then maybe 2 or 3 recipes of the pastry dough. Wouldn't it just make life so much easier if you got in a routine like that? I don't know if I really will, or if I'll just have random bursts of motivation where I make a whole bunch of stuff. But man, for that week, even if you don't have a full meal plan, but you just have really easy options to pull out, what a difference that makes in the routine. I also photographed my hand pies because they were lovely and so delicious. Okay, I'm about out of time. My house is getting very loud. Before I go, I'm going to make up a double shot of espresso and serve it up affogato style with some homemade vanilla ice cream that my daughter made in this beautiful mug from my friend Courtney from the Carolina Farmhouse. She has a shop where you can get this mug and then also some of these art pieces. So I will leave a link for that. You can check out some of these little paintings and art pieces that she did, as well as the mug. Also, again, thank you so much to Walmart for sponsoring. Check out the description box below for some of my favorite picks. Thank you so much for stopping by our farmhouse.